The Last Hope – A Race Against Time. Chapter 1. Leaving Earth. The sun was setting on Earth as Captain James Nelson walked through the bustling corridors of the spaceport. Passengers of all backgrounds bustled around him, rushing to make their departures on various spaceships heading for all manner of destinations. James breathed in deeply, taking in the scents of coffee and ion thrusters, and exhaled slowly, trying to calm his nerves. He knew that his mission was critical, and the fate of the entire galaxy rested on his shoulders. He reached the shuttle that would ferry him to his spacecraft, the Ulysses, a sleek, fast vessel capable of speeds beyond that of any previous human spacecraft. James climbed aboard and strapped himself into the cockpit seat. As he ran through the pre-flight checks, he took in the view of Earth through the cockpit window. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the last time he would ever see it. The Ulysses roared to life, the thrusters casting a red glow over the surrounding area. James pushed the throttle forward, and the ship shot off the ground at an astonishing speed. He pressed a button, and the shuttle launched from the Ulysses, hurtling through space towards the stars. James knew that he still had a long journey ahead of him, but he also knew that he had to get to his destination as fast as possible. As the shuttle sped through the galaxy, James could feel the tension and anticipation building within him. He had been chosen for this mission because he was the best pilot in the cosmos, but he also knew that he couldn't do it alone. He had a team of experts and warriors waiting for him on the distant planet of Xalix, all of whom were counting on him to arrive quickly and safely. James gritted his teeth, his mind focused on the task ahead. He had to succeed, no matter the cost. With a final burst of speed, the shuttle broke through the atmosphere of Xalix and plunged towards the planet's surface. James knew that failure meant the end of everything he held dear, and he was determined to do whatever it took to save the galaxy. As the shuttle hurtled towards the ground, James felt the G-forces pressing against him, felt the heat of re-entry on his skin, and heard the roar of the engines. He knew that this was just the beginning of his journey, and he steeled himself for the challenges to come. The adventure had only just begun. Chapter 2. Space Anomalies. The Ulysses sliced through the darkness of space, its sleek hull gleaming in the stars. Captain James Nelson sat in the cockpit, his fingers tapping nervously on the controls. He had been traveling for what felt like an eternity, but his journey was far from over. He had encountered several unusual anomalies during his flight, and he knew that he was venturing into uncharted territory. As he scanned the space in front of him, James saw a series of bright lights flickering in the distance. He leaned forward, focusing his attention on the anomaly as he tried to identify what it was. Suddenly, the Ulysses was thrown off course, slung wildly in a new direction. James gripped the controls, trying to regain control of the ship. He soon realized that the Ulysses was caught in a field of space debris. The twists and turns of metal and rocks danced around the Ulysses, threatening to rip it apart. The ship's shields held firm against the onslaught, but the controls on board started to malfunction, indicating something more sinister was going on. James fought with the controls, trying to orient the Ulysses away from the meteor shower. And then he saw it, a small craft, intrepidly trying to navigate the debris field. He recognized it from the descriptions in his briefing notes, a scout craft belonging to the enemy, the Galactic Union. James' heart raced, and he felt the adrenaline pumping through him. He knew that he was facing the best pilots of a vast enemy fleet, and he was alone against them. He had to think fast if he was going to get past them. Suddenly, he had an idea. He allowed his ship to be caught within the debris field, bringing the Ulysses close to the other craft. The Galactic Union craft whizzed by him, and he had a chance to take a quick photo of the markings on the hull. It appeared to be a serial number and tracking key for the ship. He plotted the coordinates, and then the Ulysses broke free of the debris, accelerating rapidly away from the Union ship. But he knew that he hadn't seen the last of them. Tests he had conducted while in space showed that the Union ship was tracking and following the Ulysses. James was acutely aware of the danger he was in, and he knew that he needed to take every precaution to ensure his mission's success. As they continued on their journey, he prepared himself for the challenges to come, knowing that the galaxy's fate rested in his hands. Chapter 3: Betrayal. Captain James Nelson had always been a trusted member of the Galactic Alliance, but that trust was about to be tested to the limit. As he flew towards Xalix, he received an encrypted message from an unknown source. The tone of the message was terse, dark, and unsettling. It warned him that there was a traitor in their midst, someone who was working against their efforts to save the galaxy. James had a quick flashback to the photo of the Galactic Union craft. He knew that their trackers were the best in the galaxy, and it was just a matter of time until they knew everything about the Ulysses and their mission on Xalix. He didn't know who to trust anymore. James had always believed that the Galactic Alliance had a robust security system in place, but now he was not so sure. He had to act fast. As he gained closer to Xalix with his team, the atmosphere grew tense. The darkness around them only fed their unease. He suspected that the entire mission was at risk. His ship suddenly rocked, and he knew that something was drastically wrong. He patted his chest and noticed the small reactor embedded in his uniform vibrating at high frequency. He had secretly inserted it before taking off. He quickly analyzed the radiation waves using his wrist scanner and found a radioactive isotope which suggested a severe malfunction of the ship's systems. He remembered the warning of the encrypted message and knew that it must have something to do with a traitor on board. Suddenly, the screens on his spaceship went black, leaving him flying blindly through space. He quickly reached for the radio, hoping to contact his team. But he was met with silence. James knew that something was seriously wrong, and he was desperate for answers. He cut the thrusters and coasted through space, his eyes straining as he tried to see any sign of his team or anybody else. And then, he saw something in the distance, something moving quickly towards him. It was a Galactic Union ship, and it was locked onto his position. James knew that he had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. His instincts told him that the only chance he had was to fight. As his ship went into battle mode, James took a deep breath, trying to keep his cool as he prepared to fight for his life. It was a fight that he couldn't afford to lose. Chapter 4: The Perfect Planet. The Ulysses emerged from the debris field, battered and bruised from the battle it had just faced. The marks of the battle visible on the ship, and a dull fatigue hung over Captain James Nelson's features. He wiped sweat from his forehead, knowing that they had narrowly escaped disaster. He needed a break, something to clear his head. They were only a few light years away from their destination, Xalix, the perfect planet for their mission. The planet was shrouded in a thick white fog, and the team eagerly anticipated landing on its surface. As they approached the planet, they noticed that the atmosphere was unusually opaque, and the sensors only registered a sparse level of population. It was strange, and it worried everyone on board. But they had to proceed with caution. The sensors picked up faint signals from the surface, pointing them towards a landing site. The team quickly secured the Ulysses, then suited up in their protective gear, readying themselves to explore the new world. Upon exiting the ship, James noted the atmosphere was laced with a strange chemical composition which gave everything a red tint. It was cool and deserted, the only sounds being their own footsteps on the barren ground. The team had been briefed that the planet was abandoned, but they could not fathom why. It was a beautiful place, the air was breathable, and the climate was mild. It seemed like the ideal spot for a base, or even a colony. But as they ventured further out, they found something entirely unexpected. They stumbled upon what looked like an ancient structure, half buried in the ground. The team was stunned. They had no record of such buildings ever existing on Xalix. As they approached the structure, they saw that it was made of a peculiar crystal-like substance. It pulsed with some unseen energy, and its edges glowed with a blue hue. James had never seen anything quite like it. As they entered the structure, the team saw a holographic image of an alien race capable of creating beautiful works of art and architecture. The holograph showed the extensive archive of the exact same structures spread across the galaxy in various star systems. With the assistance of the computer, the team activated the structure, and it emitted a blue light. Suddenly, they saw a map of the galaxy. Xalix served as a hub, and the holographic blueprints revealed the exact location of an ancient device capable of transporting entire planets across space. James couldn't believe his eyes, and neither could the rest of his team. They had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. As they left the structure, James knew that they were on a whole new level of intensity. They had found something they had never expected, and they had to do everything they could to uncover its secrets. With the map laid out before them and their curiosity piqued, there was no going back. They knew that the fate of the galaxy was in their hands, and they were determined to do what it took to ensure its survival. Chapter 5: The Alien Threat. As the sun began to set on Xalix, the team set up camp a few meters away from the crystal structure they had discovered earlier. Captain James Nelson knew that they had to be vigilant because they were not alone on the planet. Suddenly, one of the team members made a startling discovery. The structure's power source was dwindling, and the map was fading away. They only had a few hours left to find the ancient device that could save the galaxy. The team was tense, silently knowing that they were short on time. They heard strange noises in the distance, but they couldn't pinpoint the source. James kept his hand on his phaser. He knew that they were in danger. Suddenly, they saw movement in the shadows. They raised their weapons, getting ready to defend themselves, but nothing emerged from the darkness. It was like something had disappeared before their very eyes. The team huddled together, discussing the situation. They needed to find the ancient device, but they couldn't do so without being safe from the alien threat. They were dealing with an advanced species, one that had weapons and technology more potent than their own. They needed a plan. James analyzed the situation, piecing together the scant clues he had gleaned from the area. He realized that the aliens were covertly watching their every move, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The team decided that they had to move. They broke camp, headed towards the ancient device, hoping to avoid any confrontation with the aliens. But as they traveled, they heard the sound of phaser fire ringing out in the distance. They picked up their pace, racing towards the sound, fearing the worst. As they approached the location, they saw a brutal battle between the alien race and the Galactic Alliance. The Alliance was outnumbered, outgunned, fighting for survival against an incredibly coordinated alien force. The team knew that they had to act quickly to help their comrades. They joined the fight, struggling against the aliens, firing their phasers, and using all the skills they had been trained in. It was a fierce battle, filled with death and destruction. But somehow, they managed to turn the tide, and the enemy began to retreat. As the dust settled on the battlefield, James realized that they had narrowly escaped death. They had thought that they were prepared for anything, but the alien threat had taken them by surprise. James knew that they couldn't let this happen again. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and they had to be ready for any situation that came their way. They knew that they had to press on and find the ancient device before the alien threat could stop them. Their mission had become more critical than ever, and they had to succeed at any cost. Chapter 6: The Final Decision. James and his team had finally located the ancient device that could save the galaxy. They had faced incredible dangers and overcome unimaginable obstacles, but their mission was now in the final phase. The device was enormous, stretching beyond anything that they had ever seen before. It had been hidden from view, buried deep beneath the surface of Xalix for centuries, waiting for the right people to uncover it. James and his team studied the device carefully, piecing together its intricate design. The computer analyzed the alien language it was written in, and with time, they learned to decipher it, slowly unlocking the secrets of the device. The device was capable of transporting a planet across space, putting them in a new solar system, a place where they could start anew. It was a way to escape the advancing darkness, to find a new home and begin again. But it came at a cost. The device required enormous amounts of energy to function, enough to power an entire planet. Once it was activated, the energy source would be drained, and the device couldn't move again until it could be recharged. They had a difficult decision to make, and there was no time to waste. The darkness was advancing, destroying galaxies, and rendering entire planets uninhabitable. James knew they had to act fast, but was it worth the cost, worth the sacrifice of draining an entire planet's energy? As the team debated the possibilities, James thought hard on it. He thought about the people he had met, the worlds he had visited, and the societies he had encountered. He knew that the decision he would make would not only affect the crew of the Ulysses but also the fate of humanity. In the end, he knew what they had to do. They were fully committed to saving the galaxy, whatever the cost. They made the ultimate sacrifice, permanently setting the device in motion, even though it meant draining the planet of its energy. The team watched in awe as the planet they had been standing on began to break apart, as the device activated, and the energy was sucked away. They had made the ultimate sacrifice, and James had made the final decision. As the planet broke apart and disintegrated into dust, James and the team watched, knowing that they had accomplished something truly remarkable. Using the device, they had saved the galaxy, and ensured that humanity and other species could live on. James smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had saved the galaxy, and it was all because they were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. Chapter 7. The last hope. Years had passed since the Ulysses crew had activated the ancient device, and they had successfully transported the last remaining planets to new, habitable solar systems far away from the advancing darkness. But as time passed, new dangers had arisen, and the galaxy continued to face new threats. Humanity and its allies had survived, but they were still vulnerable. Captain James Nelson watched from the bridge of the Ulysses, scanning the vast expanse of space for signs of danger. He knew that they had to be vigilant, that they could never let the guard down. They were the last hope for the survival of countless species, and their stakes were higher than ever. It was then that the alarms began blaring. James stared at the monitors in shock, his breath caught in his throat. A massive object was hurtling towards them, something they had never seen before. The object was an enormous spaceship, and it looked like nothing that they had ever encountered. It was sleek and angular, and it bristled with weapons, ready to engage them in battle. The team sprang into action, manning their stations, preparing for the worst. The Ulysses had been upgraded, but it was no match for the impossibly advanced vessel. The ship's communication system suddenly flickered to life, and the crew heard an alien voice coming from the ship. The voice identified itself as a member of the xenophobic Yarvax race, one who had been displaced by the actions that the Ulysses crew had taken years earlier. The Yarvax voice vowed to destroy the Ulysses for what had been done, and as the ships approached, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. But just as the battle was about to begin, something incredible happened. The alien race that the Ulysses had saved, the ones from the displaced planets, entered the fray, fighting on their behalf. The team watched in awe as the race valiantly and ferociously attacked the Yarvax ship, giving the Ulysses a vital breath with which to survive. The battle was fierce, but in the end, humanity and their allies emerged victorious, defeating the Yarvax and saving themselves from destruction. James breathed a sigh of relief as the dust settled, and he looked down at his console, feeling sincerely grateful for the friends he had made, and the world that they had created. He knew that they were the last hope for the survival of countless other species, and they had made it. As the team returned to their work, James smiled, thoughts of all they had accomplished, wishing they could have saved everyone. But still, they had saved the galaxy, and that was good enough for him. He could only hope that in their travels, they would continue to find new allies and help the universe grow, spreading hope where there was none, and light where there was darkness.